Welcome, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the world premiere of The Fall of Usher. I am joined for the live filmmaker Q&A with director and writer Brian Cunningham.
Hi.
Welcome, Brian, and thank you so much for being with us
Oh,
tonight.
thank you guys for having me. This was I was sad that I missed the live event, so it's awesome that I could be here and talk a little bit about the movie. This is my first chance to talk about the movie to people who've actually seen it, so that's kind of exciting.
So, Saturday was the world premiere. Is it going to be shown in any other festivals?
Yeah, we just this weekend we showed at the Sin City Horror Fest, and then we've got a couple other screenings that are we're waiting to hear. Just like film festivals all the time, just waiting to hear back and line up a couple other festivals, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, we hope that more and more people get to see this film because it's wonderful.
Thank you.
One of the things that struck me about it was in this age of COVID and how much we've kind of lost um, philosophically and conceptually, as well as physically, as well as the people in our lives that have died from COVID that we've lost. Just our way of life has changed a lot. And I think there's been a collective mourning happening in America, at least. And it was interesting for me how I viewed the Poe stories through that lens. And then how you managed to bring all of these different elements from different Poe stories into one film that really kind of drills down into how Poe felt and dealt with loss and grief.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that as a concept in the film?
Yeah. So when you set out to do Poe, the question is always how, which story do you pick and how do you flesh it out? Because most Poe stories aren't enough for a feature. So when I jumped into it, I was just of the idea. I was looking at all of his stories. I was drawn to the fact that there are so many themes that are connected between these things, and one story will just be kind of a little left turn from another story when it comes to a lot of the horror stuff. And then also there's this great sense of farce and comedy and a bunch of stories that are just completely untapped, because on film usually you go with the top five Poe stories. So when I sat down to write it, it was more about read everything Poe again and highlight and go through it and just really find the themes that connected, and match up. Okay, this kind of feeds into this and kind of play with the story. And what really kind of tied the whole thing together was William Wilson, which is a story that really isn't overexploited, but from Poe. It's not like the Black Cat that's done a 10 million times. And it was a little fun twist on what you expect Poe to be, but still worked in with that psychological element, which is what I was really, I wanted to have a very psychological take that was less about, the gothic feel and more about, just really doing kind of a character study. Um, so yeah, so the writing it was basically, flipping through a lot of Poe, pulling quotes from here or there, shifting everything together, until it got to a point where I couldn't even tell you, which story, which quote came from exactly. It just kind of took on a life of its own and became its own thing, which is great.
Yeah. Um, it just occurs to me now that you're putting William Wilson at this kind of the central hub of the story is
Yeah.
sort of manifested in William and his brother.
Hmm.
Because I remember the first time I watched it, I was looking, I'm like, is that the same actor? Like, because
Yeah.
you really managed to cast two people that look they have very similar features in ways, but I'm like, oh no, that guy's taller and this is different. And I had to really look at the
Yeah.
shape of his nose and the shape of his eyes and forehead and things.
Yeah.
Um, but that whole doppelganger, it occurs to me too that Poe has a lot of a thread kind of running through in terms of like losing something, but also things being taken away from you.
Yeah.
So, like William Wilson, it's kind of all about like this entity that he feels is encroaching on his personhood and taking that the good parts away from him. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and what I love about Poe is there's also a question, there's always that question of, is that being taken away from you, or is this kind of, the unreliable narrator, is this an imagined story? Is this a story you're telling yourself that may or may not be 100% true? So that was really what what I responded to in reading Poe, and William Wilson was just the perfect story. When you read that story, it's like, how much of this is metaphor, how much of this is real, how much of this is just interesting character study. So yeah, that was a great hitting on that story. Was kind of like, okay, I've kind of found a story that can pull all these different threads together.
nice. And then the casting in your
Mhm.
film is excellent. I mean, those three performers are excellent, excellent. How have you worked together before, or was there an open call?
Yeah, so it was written with Riker and Spencer basically already cast from the beginning. We did a movie called Wretch together. That was another, like, only a 3 person, basically a 3 person cast. So I was really comfortable with working with those guys. And then we brought in Savannah. Uh, she was I had worked with her on a movie called Loss Prevention, where she had a smaller role, and I just remember thinking, she's fantastic. I wish this role was bigger. So we got a chance to bring her in and work with her a lot more on this. But yeah, that core group, like I knew they could handle everything, and bring more to it than I was thinking of. It's always great to work with actors that you know really well and are friends with, so you can really collaborate and you can trust each other, and you can trust them to bring things, and you can bring things, and they can tell you when you're wrong. And you know uh I always like actors that I can argue with without it turning into a fight, if that makes sense. And you have to really be comfortable with everybody to be able to do that. So I was super lucky that when it came time to make this, they all were on board with doing this little crazy movie.
It also sounds like you have kind of a small, like a core group of crew that you work with as well.
Yeah, so we do. So I own a video production company with my friend and partner Matt Niehoff, and has actually co-directed 2 of the movies we've done with me. Um, so we have, through that, we do commercials all the time, so we have crew that we work with on that, and we do bigger budget stuff and smaller budget stuff. And through that, you just get kind of into a groove of knowing who you can work with. And so for the movies, the way I like to do them is just scale the crew back as much as possible, so it's just a small handful of people hanging out, that you enjoy each other's company. That's always kind of overlooked on movies, I think, because you're going to spend, a couple of months with these people. You should really make sure you enjoy hanging out, so it's a good experience. So yeah, we've done 5 movies now, and most of the crew has stayed pretty consistent across that. So Nick as a producer, Janelle as production designer and producer, costume design. She really does almost everything. And then Autumn doing makeup and visual effects. Joe Stockton doing sound and the incredible, amazing score. Every movie I joke, I'm like, you're in a year, you're not going to be available because you're going to be doing some major Netflix show and you're just going to tell me to find someone else. Um, yeah, and then the cast are pretty consistent. That I just really like to hang out with people whose company we all enjoy. When we're not making movies, we're just hanging out and watching movies together. So it's really fun to be able to make movies like that, which is a rarity, I think.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if you have to be around these people for multiple hours a day,
Yeah,
many hours a day, many hours a month,
sometimes too many
um,
hours. Yeah.
worthwhile to to like each other, I guess. What kind of movies inspire you?
Oh, you know, everything across the board. I'm obviously a giant horror fan, so I grew up on John Carpenter and Wes Craven movies and the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and the franchise things. Um, I love Cronenberg a lot. I love, but also beyond that, watching a lot of non-genre stuff, a lot of dramas and things like that. Um it's kind of across the board as to what I watch, and kind of get sucked into. um I don't think there's, for some reason, I think every movie that we do has some of The Shining in it. That you'll find like some visual thing that I'm like subconsciously stealing from The Shining. I don't know why. I think I just watched that at a time in my life that was, when you're 11, 12 years old and you watch those movies and they're just kind of seared into your brain, and come out in strange ways later. So there's a few movies like that that are just
Okay.
stuck in my subconscious, I think.
So was one of those elements Riker's hair getting more and more
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
disheveled?
that was always fun. It was fun to play with Riker's look throughout the movie. Just because he's always game for uh, doing anything with his appearance. We actually worked together at a haunted house. Is how I met him. I was directing a haunted house in Louisville, and I met him when he was 17 years old. And that year, he shaved his head to be in the haunted house so he could put on different wigs and play different characters in this maze that he was running around in. So it's always been kind of the joke. It's like you give Riker the opportunity to change his look or just kind of disappear into the look of a character, and he's always game for it. So we're looking for ways to do that in, in anything we do.
That's amazing. To have that kind of performer that's just will be just so immersed into the character.
Yeah, I mean he really loves what he does, and just loves going deep into characters, which is fantastic because it means, I can do a little less work, because he's figured out every beat of the character. So then it's just, I come in and talk to him about specifics of the scene and blocking, and I know he's going to bring something great to it.
You mentioned earlier that you really like a collaborative atmosphere when you're making movies. With the fall of Usher, did you adhere pretty well to the script, or was there, I guess, how much change did anything change from the script in while you were making the film in collaboration with the actors?
Yeah, we adhered pretty closely, mostly just because the structure of it, the way you bounce back and forth, it's kind of tough to go do fully ad-libbed scenes or anything like that because it's so difficult to realize, where you're at and what came before or after.
Mhm.
Um, but where we did do a lot more collaboration and kind of finding things is more the visual style of it, the way the movie looks, the production design. Um, for instance, like at the um, the scene at the funeral home where he walks up to the casket and sees his father. That was completely added. It was a scene that wasn't really in the original script, but just because we found a cool location and Janelle came up with the idea of doing this and how it could fit in with the overall story. And I was like, oh yeah, and that would be great because it would also, call back to this other scene, and so that's kind of how it goes back and forth. Is it, at the end of the day, it's really hard to remember honestly what came from who and how the whole thing went, just because you're kind of just shooting ideas back and forth between everybody so often. It just kind of it becomes its own thing.
Nice. So have you had a cast and crew viewing of the film? yet?
We have not yet because
No,
COVID.
so
Yeah, it's hard to
ah,
getting everyone together in the same room, and a room big enough that everyone could feel comfortable. And
mhm.
yeah, and honestly, we also just, the week before you guys got the final movie is when we finished final color correction and
Oh,
and sound. So it's you know really freshly finished. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a local screening sometime very soon. Hopefully, if we can just keep this virus,
I
get
know it, but
the
keep it at
cases to
bay.
go down. Yeah, it's tough.
So you're in Louisville, Kentucky,
Mhm.
which I think is William Girdler country. Are you familiar with him at all?
I'm not super familiar, but
Just curious.
yeah. Yeah, we're a strange little city, with a lot of like tangential connections to a lot of people, and yet no one wants to call us home. I feel like is kind of where we land.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, it seems like a really cool city. I think
Oh
people
yeah,
hear Kentucky and they
yeah.
have an idea about it, but
No, I'm born and raised here, and I'm a huge fan of Louisville. And it's also like it's a great place to make a movie because you get the southern hospitality, but you also get, the ability drive 20 minutes in any direction and you can get a forest or a lake or, kind of an urban setting or, suburbs. So you can kind of there's a lot of resources here that are really cool for making movies.
sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the Discord server
Um,
chat, and there's a question here or a comment. In 2019, we had Roger Corman out as a guest at the festival, and we talked about his Poe and Lovecraft adaptations. So your film's obviously a different kind of film, but were you influenced by any of those AIP films with
yeah,
your process on this film?
I think you can't. I think anybody making horror movies was influenced by those. You just kind of can't not be. For me, though, I think the real influence was kind of the look and feel. Obviously, the red lights, the red when the figures coming down the hall and the everything goes to the red. The mask, all just kind of the way we shot it visually. I think we were trying to harken back to those without it feeling, like we were ripping them off, if that makes sense. Um, and then Vincent Price, just his delivery and his way of just kind of adding a gravitas to everything. I know that was something that Riker looked at, trying to figure out how to bring that gravitas without feeling like you're ripping off a performance. Um, so absolutely. I mean, there's no we didn't I didn't actually I actually avoided going back and watching those before we started shooting just to make sure I wasn't that any specifics that made it in were subconscious. Um, but but yeah, I don't think there's a way to not be influenced by those, especially the visual style, because it's just such a distinct that feel of those movies is so clear in your head.
Definitely. Um, one of the elements in the film, it kind of felt almost like a stage show because of how the sets didn't seem like the focus. It was more about the lighting and the two characters relating to each other. But there were a few kind of key props in the film. Can you talk about how you chose those and if they had any deeper significance other than what they were? For example, the music box.
Yeah. Yeah, the music box was basically that's our telltale heart, instead of getting the heart in the buried under the floorboards, it's this music box that keeps coming back over and over. And that was and what it's playing is the last waltz of von Weber, which is a reference to fall of the House of Usher. So it's that was just something that I wanted something with the music box that kind of ties that sense of grief and almost self torture that goes through the movie, that's his mother's music box that his father apparently keeps and listens to, after his mother is dead, and then he keeps, and is lodged deeply in his consciousness, that song and that music box. So, I think the music box is very much like, not being able to let go of, that grief or that sense of guilt, that I think both the William character and his father probably feel about the mother. Um, so yeah, so trying to give the props and the elements like that some significance that ties in with those themes of Poe without being, a giant stuffed raven on the wall, that's gonna just be a little too on the nose for this kind of stuff was kind of what we were going for.
Nice. And then was that all shot in one location, that house? Was that all one house?
It was, yeah, and, it was my house. So, yeah. So, the way we shoot these is very much, like I said, I have a video production company, so we're doing commercials during the week and then taking long, 3 or 4 day weekends to do this, which I love shooting that way because usually when you do a movie, it's 6 days on, 1 day off, 35 days. And by the end of it, everyone can't even see straight, with the amount of work that's been done. But I think we get better stuff when we're doing, 3 or 4 days on and then take some time off to actually rework it, think about what we shot, see if we need to redo anything. Um, and the only way to really do that is to have locations that you can own and just really control, because you can't just rent a location for 20 days and shoot the whole thing out. So when it came to this one, it was like, well, my house has that nice long hallway. It makes sense that this could kind of work. So that was when me and Janelle got together and redressed my entire house, and it stayed that way for about a year and a half. Where we had that god awful wallpaper up on the walls and all the props out. So I was basically living in a movie set. I was living in that set for a year and a half. Yeah, and it by the end of that shoot, it felt haunted. Definitely felt haunted.
And is there actually a basement entrance in that bedroom?
There is,
Yeah.
yes.
That is
Which,
creepy. That
yeah, when
whole
I bought the
basement.
house, I was like, "This is really creepy. This would be fun in a movie." Okay, so maybe we'll write that into this. So,
Well,
yeah,
it's kind of a nice nod to, Madeline being in the Usher crypt, and then
yeah,
also the cask of Amontillado with
yep,
the wall being built and everything,
yeah.
and
You can't do Poe without having at least one major subterranean,
yeah.
thing. And it all was also, it was kind of the crypt from Annabelle Lee, where he goes down and basically sleeps by her side.
Mhm.
So yeah, we checked a lot of boxes with my creepy basement.
And it's nice how, right at the beginning, William tells you that he's a liar by nature, and you kind of know, okay, well, this is not everything is going to be factual. And
Yeah,
it's nice how you kind of layer the events on each other as a way that, as we get older, we suffer more losses, and um, that layering of his mother, the image of his mother in the bathtub with Anna in the bathtub,
right.
and those kinds of things were interesting for me. Were those, I guess, tell us a little bit about the reveals, and then how you decided to choose those scenes, or how those scenes related to each other.
Yeah. Uh, so, I mean, really, one of the main things that made me want to write the movie is the idea of Poe's unreliable narrator. The idea that whenever you read a Poe story, you know that the person telling the story is not telling you the truth. And you're really living in that person's head, which is the best horror, I think, is when you get to live in someone else's head and it's horrifying. Um, So my idea was kind of, let's take that to kind of its logical conclusion, where everything is kind of off the table, where the twist ending might not even be the real ending, and where the other twist ending might, where basically this character is so lost in his own head and in the stories he's telling himself by the end of it, that we're not 100% sure exactly which version of the story he's telling is real, because he's probably not 100% sure of which version
Mm,
is real. Yeah, and I think that the way that that happens, the way he gets to that point is, like you said, all those connections, like, you know, seeing his mother in the bathtub, and then he sees Anna in the bathtub. You have the kind of drug sequence where everyone's laughing at him, and then she starts laughing at him in the tub. Just kind of those kind of poetic, you can't quite put your finger on it, but the way your subconscious brain kind of connects these elements in ways that your conscious brain maybe isn't even aware of. So as we were going through it, trying to find pieces where those things kind of lined up, so that you could see, you as an audience member could probably see some stuff that's working on his psyche that he's not really even aware of, that he's not even talking about. So that was fun to, just really pick through the stories and the script and see what we could do to kind of bring a little bit of a more modern psychology, look at, what's going on in his subconscious. So
nice.
that was the idea.
Well, it was well put. I have to say it was well put together, and I really, we both Brian and I really enjoyed the performances, and just the way that it was a very modern story, using those elements of classic Poe tales.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was, the time period was always a question. Is like, do you try and make this an 80s or a 70s, or, so the in the end we basically just said, let's just not define it. This is all in William's head anyway.
Mhm.
So, he's got that ugly green rotary phone for some reason, that he's dialing, which kind of makes you question the time period. And there's no cell phones that we see, but there's modern cars out the window. So it kind of plays with reality, even in the sense of when this takes place a little bit, which was really fun from production design and props standpoint too. So
Well, excellent. I'm gonna just take a quick look at our Discord server and see if
yeah.
anyone's actually watching. See if we
Yeah.
have any questions. Um, and yeah, the hopefully that they. I have a feeling that many people are either still watching films or are in bed,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is very. It's like 2:30 there for
It
you, isn't
is
it? Oh my
2:30
gosh.
here. Yep.
Okay.
So
Well, I do not see any other people really in the chat right now. So I'm going to wrap this up and let you go to bed. But thank you again for being here and for making this wonderful film and letting us host the world premiere of it.
yeah, thank you guys so much for having me and giving me a chance to ramble about the movie a little bit. And yeah, and for putting on an awesome event that it was so cool to be able to premiere this with you guys. So we really appreciate everything you've done. It's been a great event, both the streaming and the live event. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask when we pretty much ask this of almost every filmmaker we talk to. But just real quickly, were there any happy accidents that happened in the filming of the movie where maybe something didn't quite go as planned, but ended up being better for the film?
Uh, we kept lucking into really cool locations that made me rewrite the script a little bit. So, like I said, like the funeral scene was just supposed to be, we're outside of the funeral home and there's some people in suits and there's some handshaking, and then Janelle is like, "Hey, I've got a funeral home, and we've got a casket and all this other stuff we can use. Do you want to use it?" And I'm like, "Yes." So let's okay. That became like a really cool sequence in the movie. The same thing happened with the hospital sequence, where Mr. Usher's getting kind of taken off to get tested. That was going to be a doctor's office, but then, we had awesome people involved who were like, "Hey, check out this room," and just we walk around a corner and there's this amazing location. So that happened a lot, where it's not necessarily that it was a happy accident in shooting, but it was a happy accident with, just finding people just all of a sudden showed up who were like, "Hey, that thing you didn't think you could get or you couldn't afford, here it is." So we were incredibly fortunate. That happened a lot during this movie. So yeah, I don't know what if something was looking out for us or what, but yeah, that was the happy accidents we had.
Nice. So like the opposite of a cursed movie.
Exactly. Well, I'll knock on wood. We haven't released it to the masses yet. So yeah.
So for okay, so yeah, Brian just reminded me of something that apparently the movie Asylum of Satan was the first feature film filmed in Louisville, Kentucky. So have you seen this film or heard
Asylum
about it?
Satan. It sounds familiar.
It's
Was
um it's a special movie. It's a horror film, and it's about the Asylum of Satan. It's about a musician. I think she's a pianist, or maybe she's a dancer. She's a performer of some kind that needs rest. She's like overtired, and so they send her to
Yeah.
this asylum for a rest period. But it ends up being Satanists. So
Yeah.
that really
Of course. The title just gives it all away.
yeah.
You know where it's going. I have not seen it, but I will absolutely check it out.
um, I
Yeah.
recommend it. I recommend that everyone and anyone interested in Louisville film history go check out this movie.
Was it shot at Waverly? Was that the asylum? Because we have Waverly Hills
I don't
here.
think so. I don't think it was shot in an actual asylum. To me, it looked like
Okay.
kind of like a mansion house or a
Okay.
historic property, something like that, or like
Gotcha.
a something you would see that and you'd be like, oh, is this a girls' boarding school?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah,
So.
we've got a lot of those old mansions just sitting around in Louisville here. So
But
maybe
it's got a groovy soundtrack and a very fun scene, a very fun ritual scene. So
okay. I will have to check it out. I'm embarrassed I haven't seen it. I'm sad you guys know more about the history of film in the city of Denver, but oh well.
well, the only reason I know this is because one of my father's classmates was William Girdler's producer, and like many years ago sent us one of the lithographed one sheets for Asylum of Satan.
Oh,
And we
nice.
were like, oh, this is a really cool poster. What is this movie about? And then we went and watched it. We're like, oh my God, like, we have to
Yeah.
try out. So we actually did a special screening for our fans brought him out and
Oh,
showed a
cool.
couple films. So that was fun.
That's awesome. I will have to check it out. Find out where I can get it nowadays. It's always tough with some of those movies. You
Yeah,
know.
I think we had to rent it from we have like so movie Madness, which is now part of the Hollywood Theater, is just a huge video store here in Portland, Oregon, and we'll have to get you out here so you can go visit it. But it's kind of a movie history museum as well as a movie rental place, and they categorize everything by genre rather than by alphabetical title or director. So
Right. Yeah.
it's a fun
Yeah.
place to browse in. But yeah, we will have something like that. Maybe check that one out or
Okay. I will look. We don't
check
have
out
anything
more
that
for it.
cool here. We used to. We had a Wild and Woolly video, which had that exact same
Uh,
setup. But a victim of the new age of streaming videos. So
agreed.
I miss video stores so much. That was where I went to hang out. So,
Well, with all of that out of all that being said, I will let you go, but let our audience know where they can find out news and updates about the fall of Usher. They're keeping an
Sure.
eye on it.
Yeah, our website is thoughtflyfilms.com, and there's links to Usher, so you can see whenever it comes out in different places. And then on Twitter, which is honestly the one that we update the most, at Usher Movie, and then I'm at BJCUNNING. So at BJ Cunning, which is an awful Twitter handle, but it's what I'm stuck with. So
Did you do that on purpose?
I did not.
You did not.
it
Okay.
was too long ago. I made bad choices. What can I say?
So with that, I will leave you with an entreaty to make a Lovecraft film so that you can come back to
I,
the festival.
I would love to. That would be so much fun.
And we would love
So
that too.
I will look at it. How do you I always Lovecraft is intimidating. Like I'm the movies you guys have are amazing, but it's so tough because it's like, how do you show the monster without showing the monster? So much of it is correspondence and hearing of stories, secondhand. And Cosmic Terror is just, doing that on film. People who can do that well, like that's a feat to get to get the unseeable and unknowable horror seen and known, in a movie is an intimidating task.
I think if you approached it in a similar way to the how you approach this film, I think you would do really well.
Yeah, well, we'll have to put Riker in it. Riker
Okay.
going crazy again, which he's very good. He's very good at going crazy. He'll have to figure out a different way for him to go crazy and bleed from the eyes at some point.
Mm,
That's the
mhm,
only way it's going
mhm.
to work.
Okay. And
So.
trying to impart that knowledge, that horrible, terrible knowledge on somebody else.
Yep. My favorite part with all the Lovecraft stuff is the cult scenes, like just the idea of the cults built up around these gods where they're just obsessive and stuff. So maybe I'll do something with that. That sounds topical right now. So
Yes. Unfortunately.
yeah,
Well, all right. I planted the seed. I feel like my job.
yeah. Great.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to say
Yeah.
goodnight. And to the audience who happens to be watching this now live or later on when it's pre recorded, thank you for joining us. And Brian, I think you have the invite to our Discord server. So if you are in the frame of mind to jump on there, just introduce yourself and let people know that they can ask you questions and chat with you further in the Discord server. And that's something that is up all year long. So
Okay. Great.
every now and then people pop in there and like there's a little blip. Whoop, I get a little notification that someone has said something. So that's a
Okay.
great place
Uh,
to also interact with our audience.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I will check it out.
All right. Thank you and good night.
Thanks a lot.